getting more and more questions from graduate students about how they can use participatory research within their graduate programs, within their dissertation. So first, there's a question of even if it's okay for them to do it. PhD students are often told that they can't use a participatory approach because they have to do, quote, independent research. In my humble opinion, that's a total load of BS. Yes, you can use participatory approaches while you are doing your research training. Learning to collaborate equitably with community partners should be an important part of research training, not something that goes against what you would need to do in a PhD program. The independent part that we talk about when we're talking about PhD students doing independent research is distinguishes what you're doing from what you do in a research assistant capacity on your advisor's projects, not how you collaborate with the community. Of course, if needed, you may need to separate the dissertation itself from published papers, but that is all doable. And of course, those details depend on the nuance of your project. Overall, don't be dissuaded just because that's not the approach your advisor uses. It can really be a very important part of research training and certainly is compatible with graduate programs. That being said, it's not easy. There are many challenges, and it doesn't mean that every graduate student should or can use a participatory approach, because again, it can be quite hard. First big challenge is the funding, or often the lack thereof, for community partners. We really do try to pay community partners for their time, and I know that can sometimes be a challenge with unfunded projects. Participatory approaches also tend to require lots of extra time and energy, and I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you that it can slow things down. It's going to be a lot faster to do a dissertation off of a secondary database analysis of existing data than to actually use a participatory approach, especially if you're using it to create a partnership, collect data, interpret data, and so forth. So, I mean, participatory research, especially when it comes to participatory approaches, especially when it comes to autism research, are relatively new, and your supervisors may have more traditional views, or they may not be well versed in participatory approaches, which can certainly lead to conflicts sometimes if you're approaching things in a different way. And then, regardless of who your supervisors are, it's harder to navigate co-learning with community partners when you're still learning the science. I mean, part of what you bring to a partnership is that scientific expertise, but if you're just kind of unsure of it yourself or figuring it out, that can add extra insecurity, extra challenges. It's important, but that can be hard. And then, oftentimes we think about CBPR as if we're all sort of meeting together, but you almost certainly will be getting feedback from your advisors, from your dissertation committee members, from your professors, outside of meetings with community partners. So you have to think about how to address that and how you're kind of going back and forth between what you're learning from your academic world and what you're co-learning in partnership with your community partners. And then if you listen to them, to what I just was talking about with CBPR, at least, we really expect it to be this long-standing relationship. And you might be planning on leaving after graduation, and you might not be able to actually promise or commit to a long-standing relationship. And of course, there's additional issues, some positive, some more challenging, for graduate students who are insider researchers. I'm not going to get into those now, but I would recommend you watching Dr. Raymaker's videos and resources for insider researchers who are trying to use a participatory approach on a website. So there are challenges, but yes, it's really possible. One thing I would recommend is to include a participatory researcher on your dissertation committee. It might just be that you're already working with a dissertation chair or committee members, but if they're not already versed in it, it's helpful to have somebody, a faculty member who does have that approach. if nothing else, sometimes we amongst ourselves as dissertation committee members may be able to discuss things and hold a little bit more clout than a PhD student may on their own. And then humble. There's lots to learn from all of your advisors and all of your community partners. And just because your community partner says one thing and your advisor may say something else doesn't mean that either of them are wrong or that you can't learn from them. It really means understanding what it is that they're trying to teach you and why. And what there is a lot to learn during a PhD and hopefully for the rest of your life. Consider joining or building on existing participatory groups. It's hard to start a project and a partnership all by yourself in the course of a PhD. So if it would be nice, if possible, and you can join on something that's already existing, that's great. If necessary, consider using a kind of more middle of the road approach, some form, co-productions, et cetera, or get a consultation from an established group. We've had lots of PhD students who really haven't been able to do what it takes to create an entire participatory partnership all on their own. Come and get targeted consultations, for example, from our Aspire group on very specific questions. And then look for additional funding opportunities or resources and build on your community strengths and structures and your own connections. When I was a graduate student, I did a large participatory project with outside of autism with the domestic violence community in Seattle, and through a variety of connections, got incredible contributions from the arts community, from all sorts of people who cared about the topic, and ended up doing a much bigger project than I would have if I had just stuck with whatever tiny little funding I had accessible to me at that phase of my career. And of course, be very transparent with your partners around the process, your expectations, your challenges, what you have and don't have control over. They may or may not be used to working with a PhD student, so the more you can explain as to what it is you're doing and how you can involve them in the project and where you actually need to be doing things on your own, it's going to be really important. And ultimately, be creative and go for it. There isn't one way to do anything. And if you're, if you're open to a variety of solutions, chances are you're going to be able to do a really good job, and it's going to be a much more interesting and rewarding project than if you didn't. Thanks again to the full Aspire team and to ARP.